Welcome to Chapter 7, Self-Determination Skills. In the course of this module, we will talk about self-determination as an essential skill for all individuals to develop, and particularly for students with disabilities. The definition of self-determination essentially means acting as the primary causal agent in one's life and making choices and decisions regarding one's quality of life free from undue external influence or interference. Self-determined behavior refers to actions that are identified by four essential characteristics. A, that the person acted autonomously. B, that the behaviors are self-regulated. C, that the person initiated and responded to the events in a psychologically empowered manner. And D, that the person acted in a self-realizing manner. Please stop for a second and reflect upon what you would believe the benefits of self-determination to be. Make a note for yourself, jot down 2 or 3 things that you can think of in terms of children that make self-determination an essential skill to build. Okay, good. Let me share with you what some researchers have said as to benefits of self-determination. Kellums and Morningstar in 2010 said that self-determination and self-advocacy is a predictor of post-school success. Wood and Test in 2001 said people with self-determination skills have a better quality of life, and positive outcomes are associated with being self-determined. Waymeyer, Gregoutis, and Sjogren in 2006 said that there is abundant evidence that promoting the component elements of self-determination can result in more positive adult and transition outcomes, including improved employment, community living, and community integration outcomes for students with disabilities. Several researchers remark that there's clear evidence that teaching students to self-regulate learning or teaching students to self-direct learning strategies, such as self-monitoring or self-instruction, has beneficial outcomes for students with severe disabilities in educational goal attainment, including goals linked to transition-related outcomes and to the general education curriculum. A very strong statement was made by Wood and Test in 2001 when they said that the rationale for self-determination is a basic civil right, a legislative mandate, and a right to which citizens with disabilities are entitled, and that which they have demanded. However, despite this overabundance of statement as to the benefits of self-determination for our students with disabilities that we serve, we still know that teachers, from research, we know that teachers believe that they're important, but they really can only identify very few teaching activities related to them. So certainly our charge is ahead of us to try to determine what we can do to help our students build self-determination skills. Self-determination qualities, or things that comprise what we call self-determination, include several things, and we're going to talk about several of these. Most are self-explanatory just by looking at them, but let's take a second and look at some individual ones. First of all, let's just start with this quick cartoon from Dagwood and Blondie that asks whether or not whether Dagwood's really engaging in choice making, which is an essential element of self-determination, determining a path that needs to be followed and then being able to autonomously follow it. I just wanted to give you a choice. One questions whether or not Blondie truly did give Dagwood a choice in that she was giving him a non-choice type of situation. Instead of asking him what he wanted to drink, letting him weigh the alternatives and knowing what was available, and then making an informed choice, she gave him a quasi-choice and then took that away from him. So in this situation, obviously Dagwood was not able to engage in any kind of choice-making activities because he, number one, was not given the autonomy to gather information, to make a choice, and two, was really presented with a situation that had no choice-making options available to him. Self-awareness is a key component of self-determination. With self-awareness, it means that you are aware of both your strengths and your needs. I think each one of us, without knowing it, engages in some degree of continual self-evaluation, where we are able to recognize that there are things that we do well, things that we need help with. The reason why self-awareness is such an essential component of self-determination is that it really is kind of half of the equation. Self-awareness and then self-advocacy being the other half. If someone does not have self-awareness but maybe has advocacy skills, then they're not able to articulate what it is that they're advocating for. They don't have a definitive statement of what their need area is. And if they don't have that definitive statement, then, or that definitive understanding, then that means that even if they advocate for themselves, that they're not going to be able to clearly articulate to others what exactly it is that they need. So think of this in terms of the children and young adults that you serve, and whether or not they really have a true understanding of things that they can do well, things that they need help with. If they are not able to articulate those, then we need to work with them, and we need to work with parents to help them understand that. I know it's a difficult situation, asking someone to think about a child's areas of need, areas of deficit, as well as his strengths. And then to discuss that with the child, because we feel the need to protect the child almost from that information. However, in the long run, in the immediate and the long run, it becomes essential that these individuals learn to understand what it is that they do well and what it is that they need help with. Self-efficacy is kind of depicted by this book cover, The Little Engine That Could. It's the belief that I can have a positive impact on my own environment. If we remember that original definition, it means that you're acting as the primary causal agent in your own life. Therefore, you need to believe that advocating for yourself, being aware of what it is you need, and then advocating in an effective manner for that you do have that capability to exert that influence on your environment and to achieve the supports that you are asking for. Without that feeling of self-efficacy, then one does not feel ready to do risk-taking in trying to advocate for themselves. So again, think of the children with which you work, and with whom you work, and think of ways that you could strengthen their feelings that their actions indeed have ramifications on the environment around them. Decision-making is an essential part of self-determination because, as we saw with Dagwood, he was given kind of a non-decision, and it was masked in the form of a decision. But every day we have decisions that we need to make, and in doing that we are we are demanding of ourselves that we are informed of what our choices are, that we are able to think through the positives and the negatives of those choices, and that we're able to arrive at a decision that we are going to act upon autonomously as much as possible. and then thereafter to evaluate whether that decision was an effective decision. We can see how this is a part of self-determination because one cannot exert influence upon one's own environment in requesting needed supports if one is not available of all the options that are available to them and how to effectively choose a course of action for which they're going to advocate. One of the difficulties that we see with students with disabilities in exerting self-determination skills and in believing in their own self-efficacy, their ability to influence the environment around them, and to engage in autonomous decision-making, is the concept of internal locus of control, which in effect dictates that there are others who are in charge of my environment, that decisions that are made on a daily basis do not stem from me, but rather those in authority in my environment. Because this tends to be not only a situation that's inherent to these children, but also sometimes exacerbated by the adults in the environment. These children and young adults never take the opportunity to again exert a more external locus of control and to engage in decision making and self-determination skills where they actually can shape the environment to meet their needs through being able to explicitly ask for what it is that they need in an appropriate manner. Again, here's the problem-solving loop, and just a good graphic, I would think, even to put up in a classroom, because it really speaks again to that heart of problem solving. But again, just the components of this can be challenging for students, even identifying the problem. That may go back to self-awareness, to being able to determine what it is that I do well, what it is that I have difficulty with, what the decision is that I need to make, what the problem is that I need to solve by acting on my own behalf in trying to exert control over my environment in an appropriate manner. Once you've identified through self-awareness or through problem examination what it is that that you need to engage in, for which you need to engage in self-determination or self-advocacy, you need to make sure that you're making an informed choice about the options that for which you are going to be asking for help. For example, if a student has difficulty in a particular reading class, for example, with following the print on the page, you know, there are some options. One of those is that he could just sit and wave his hand in the air. But then when asked what the issue was, he may not be able to explain the difficulty that he's having. That's not that's an option, but we may view that it's not one of the best options to be able to, for that student to self-advocate to get his needs met. Another option may be to engage in distracting behavior so that the reading task can be avoided. Again, it's an option. A third option might be to be able to raise your hand, and when the teacher comes to you, to be able to specifically say what it is that you're having difficulty with, understanding a certain vocabulary word or being able to decode a certain passage, for example. Once one looks at all of those options, whether they're good or bad, they are options, and then to decide what is my best path. And hopefully in this case, the student would pick raising the hand when the teacher asks specifically what the problem is, that student is able to articulate what the specific problem is and to be able to ask for supports in being able to address it. We hope that's the one that's picked. We hope that's the one the student tries. And then they need to evaluate the results. If they choose one of the other options and attempt to self-advocate for themselves, for example, simply by waving their hand in the air, but then not being able to articulate what it is that they actually need in the way of supports, then through evaluating the result of that, they probably will not see that their needs have been met, and it may increase frustration for them. So this whole graphic kind of depicts that scenario and the emotions that students need to move through if they are going to move from what is going on within them to what it is that they need from their environment to be able to address that particular need. There are several assessment tools that are available that are geared towards self-determination, and most of these can actually be found through the University of Oklahoma site, www.ou.edu/Zarrow, Zarrow. It's a repository for several excellent assessment tools that can be used for self-determination. Also keep in mind, though, that assessment does not need to be in the form alone of formalized tools, but can also be comprised just of direct observation, that you as the professional working with that student are actually dictating to that student, or you're actually watching that student and seeing what they're having problems with, whether they're able to express difficulties that they're having in an appropriate way, whether they're able to articulate what it is that they exactly need, whether they're able to ask appropriately for what it is that they need. Those can all be achieved also through direct observation. There are also several curricula out there that are available. Several of these, again, are available through the Zarrow Center at University of Oklahoma. And also there is information that is appended under, it's called TW Self-Determination, which is a list of materials and resources that are available that has been placed in D2L for your use. Now, this is a time for you to think and reflect. What criteria would you use to select a social or self-determination curriculum for the students in your classroom? What you'll need to do is spend some time going into the different resources that are available, that either those that are listed in this PowerPoint or those that can be found at the Zarrow Center or other resources that may help you in teaching self-determination. And once you've gone in and examined those, to be able to ask yourself questions that might help you decide whether or not the assessment tool or the curriculum is appropriate for your students. So, for example, is it age appropriate? Does it teach the skills that seem to be most problematic that you're seeing your students developing? Is there ease in delivery? Are materials readily available? These are all things that you would ask yourself when picking any curriculum, and certainly this content is no different.